Hello and welcome to another edition of Around the Valley. I'm Archie Rosarian and I'm excited. I'm just brimming with energy and excitement. There is so much to dig into, so I am not going to waste any more time. Joining me as always is Kenny Hodges. Kenny, let's get into this baby. How you doing?
Hey man, listen, it's been a tough week, been a little under the weather, but hey, like I always say, if we when we get to sit around and talk about the game, hey, it's always fun to do. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and jump in and look back at the week 6 scoreboard final, starting in the East Valley. Grant went on the road to Fulton. One of those teams had to put up get their first W of the year, and Grant, with a workmanlike performance, they come away with a 48-13 victory to pick up their first win of the year. Heading over to Monroe, Verdugo, their best performance of the season so far. Young Jared Smith, their quarterback, 269 passing, another 75 on the ground, 4 touchdowns total as Verdugo comes away with a comfortable 55-20 win on the road. Moving over to Chavez, a little upset of a slightly shocking performance here or a result here in this game as they pick up their first win over Poly 28-16 to register their first victory of the year. We knew they'd come around and get one, and they managed to hold off and beat Poly at home. And last but not least, homecoming over at North Hollywood. We had a bit of a nail biter here. We had NoHo come back from 10 points down in the fourth quarter to come away with a 24-20 victory. 6 ball carries, 295 yards total, and 3 rushing scores, including the 71-yarder by Josiah Taylor late in the fourth quarter to pull out the victory for North Hollywood and keep our leader from ruining their homecoming. Moving over to the Valley Mission, Canoga Park at home. Workmanlike performance for the young upstart team. 4 rushing touchdowns total for the team and a 37-zip win over Reseda. Moving over to Van Nuys, a game that we had our suspicions could be one of the better games of the week with the way these two offenses have performed this year. They did not disappoint. 95 points total by the teams. Carlos Herrera and Tim Tanner Jr. put on shows for Van Nuys and Silmar, respectively. Each quarterback throwing 7 TD passes in the game as Van Nuys holds on and wins 49-46. 3 missed PATs, the difference in that one. And last but not least, in the Valley Mission, Kennedy hosting Panorama. Another dominant performance by the Kennedy Cougars. Diego Montez, 9 of 14, 193 yards, 4 total touchdowns, 3 of them in the air, as Kennedy remains unbeaten in the Valley Mission. They come away with and breeze past 42-7 over Panorama. Moving over to the West Valley, Cleveland on the road at Chatsworth. A comfortable 36-19 victory for Cleveland to get their West Valley slate off to a great start. Birmingham held ground against Elko. They come away with a comfortable 42-7 win over the Royals. And last but not least, a good one over at Taft as Granada goes on the road and wins 46-30 over Taft. Dean Rosales, 230 yards on the ground for Granada, 383 as a team, 4 rushing touchdowns. Young Miles Cross had 2 long interception return touchdowns, ended up being the difference in the game. Nathan Swinson, despite those 2 pick sixes, had 258 and 4 TD passes in the loss. So Granada picks up their first win in the West Valley. So just to update the standings before we dig into the action, looking at where we stand in the East Valley, North Hollywood moves to 3-0 and they're on top of the league. Our leader, Polly and Verdugo, are behind them at 2-1 each in the league. Chavez, Grant picking up their first wins in the league. They're sitting at 1-2, along with Monroe and Fulton at 0-3 in the league behind them. Over in the Valley Mission, Kennedy at 2-0 in the league, with 2 big wins over Panorama and Van Nuys. Panorama and Van Nuys are both sitting at 2-1. San Fernando, Silmar at 1-1 in the league. Canoga sitting at 1-2. And Reseda breaking up the rear at 0-3. Over in the West Valley, just getting underway, you have Birmingham, Cleveland, Granada at 1-0. Chatsworth, Elko at 0-1 as we're moving into week 2 in the West Valley. So, takeaways from this week. So, we had blowouts, we had shootouts, we had nail biters, we had some statements. There was a lot that went on in the league, and there's a lot to try to take away from a very, very interesting week of action with a lot of really intriguing games. So we'll start with you. Um, what are some of the takeaways you have from week 6? And there's so much to dive into, but let's get into. You tell me what you got, what you took away from this past week of games.
So we'll keep it simple. East Valley, what a comeback win for NoHo. That basically solidified them, and they're going to have to really stumble if they're not going to win East Valley Crown. So essentially now, it's 100% in their hands, the crown. East Valley, they're essentially going to repeat unless they stumble. I don't see them stumbling. And that sets up an interesting future with a pissed off Arleta. That's in 2 years in a row they believe they should have won. But we'll move on. In the Valley Mission, this Van Nuys Sylmar matchup was insane. It was everything we said it was going to be. It was a barn burner. Essentially, team with the ball last goal, won. Herrera went insane, right? He only threw 18 passes for a team that we said loves to throw the ball around, but he ran the ball 18 times and had 229 yards on the ground, 4 TDs on the ground. Just flat out ridiculous. And Tim Tanner, goodness, he was the passer. 28 of 39, 304 yards, 4 touchdowns. And he also ran the ball 9 times, 37 yards and a touchdown. That was a quarterback show. And each one did something else, something different. And give me that any day of the week. That was awesome. And it speaks a lot to what these two teams are probably going to do moving out, after the season as they try to challenge when they get into playoffs. Moving into the West Valley, that Granada-Taft game was ridiculous in so many different facets. Everybody we've talked about, but there's just 2 that I'm going to pick on as far as performances. Dean Rosales, you mentioned it. 22 rushes, 230 yards. He was the unstoppable force in that backfield. They leaned on him. But the turning point in that game, the big one, Miles Cross on defense. We don't get to say this much, and I love saying it every time we do. We get to highlight some of these kids we don't talk about very often. Miles Cross had 2 interceptions and returned both of them for touchdowns. And that was combined 158 yards in interception returns. So if you look at where he intercepted that ball, almost 80-yard returns each time. He basically was the defensive player that ended half challenges and could have been that turning point in that game. Kudos to him. Great game. That was exciting. And those are my 3 takeaways.
Yeah, we kind of in the same ballpark. Like in terms of my takeaways, yeah, NoHo's grit. I thought it, needs to be talked about here, because not just because it puts them completely in the driver's seat, and I don't expect them to not walk away with the East Valley, but more importantly, winning a game like that to me tells me that this is also a team that when we get to the postseason and things get a little bit grinding, this is the sort of performance that tells you that North Hollywood might be all right. In terms of postseason, I fully expect this team to either be, when the chips fall, either top of D2 or in D1. But either way, this is going to be a tough out. This is a team with experience. This is a team that have kids that have kind of been through this. They had the undefeated East Valley season last year. There's a lot of DNA there that tells you that this team is going to be difficult to deal with when you get to postseason, just based on seeing them pull out a gutsy win in a game that, quite frankly, our leaders deserve to win. But when you have a team like North Hollywood that it's never over until it's over, those are the sort of performances that you are coming to expect from them. Yes, there's a lot to be said. You said a lot of it in terms of like Van Nuys and that Van Nuys Sylmar game. like I said, these are two teams you are not going to want to line up against when you see in the postseason because those offenses are legit. Like I said, 3 missed PATs ended up being the difference in the game, in a 3-point game. And neither one of those defenses had many answers for what those two quarterbacks were doing. But I think Kennedy's dominance is just something that has to be talked about. A team that's sitting number 5 in the city right now, you can see a confidence exuding from that group that when they take the field, they look like a team that knows that they're going to beat you. and it's not going to be close. They don't even celebrate touchdowns at this point because they expect to put up 5 or 6 of them a game. So, that's something we're going to dive into a little bit when we talk about the questions of the week coming out. And last but not least, in the West Valley, that Granada Hills and Taft game, to me, I think my biggest takeaway is, again, these are two teams that are kind of showing you that when postseason comes, you better be prepared because that Granada Hills team continues to show that they're going to run that dang on football down your throat. There's not much you can do to stop it. Yeah, you might be able to stop them once every couple of drives, but they're going to pop ones on you. And the fact that they're showing you that they can kind of dig in and get some stops defensively in a tough game on the road, I like how that projects to the postseason. And the same thing with Taft. The 2 pick sixes were a result of an aggressive offense that are going to continue to try to light that scoreboard up and drive that ball down the field with a talented passer. So those are teams that, as we get to week 7 now, when we're starting to look at postseason prospects, you're seeing a lot of boxes getting checked with our Valley teams that, you're not going to play them. You're not going to want to play them. And more importantly, I am predicting we might see this Granada Taft game again in the postseason. This might be one of those, this might be where when the chips all fall, we might end up with a Granada Taft rematch in the postseason. And if you Taft, the difference in this game was those 2 mistakes. They're going to want to see Granada again if they can get a chance to play that team again when the postseason comes. So let's leave that there, but let's go into the questions of the week. So Birmingham had a workmanlike performance. They did what we've been accustomed to them doing, a 42-7 victory over Birmingham. But there are some questions that I haven't watched this team quite a bit this year. And yeah, they're still you still see it's Birmingham. They're big up front. That front 7, they'll maul you. That quarterback we've talked about the past few weeks, Kevin Hawkins, how gigantic he is, how intimidating of a presence this man is under center. He's looked better the last couple of weeks. As we said, we needed to see some improvement in him passing the ball. We've seen that. But the question is, when you're looking at the top of the city section, when you're looking at the San Pedros of the world, when you're looking at the Eagle Rocks and teams that we know have the firepower to kind of make it a game, do you think that Birmingham has enough firepower to sort of regain that top spot in the open division when all is said and done?
I'm going to say it's close. I'm going to say there's been enough inconsistency this year where I think this might not be the year. They're not going to like to hear this, and we know they don't like to hear it. But it's quite possible that this might not be the year, and for me that comes down to not just overall firepower, but it comes down to what Kevin Hawkins has shown in his growth and maturity. The beginning of the season was the beginning of the season, but when you get to playoffs, that intensity ratchets up, and all these open teams are right there, and they're chomping at the bit to take him down. So I don't want to say it, but that's what I gotta say. I don't think this is the year.
So it's funny. I watch the team, and there are 2 things that pop up to me that I wrote in my notes. And you still see the physical dominance is there. You still see how much bigger they are across their offensive and defensive fronts. Like I said, the quarterback's huge. They've got some skilled players that are still wow you when you see them breaking plays and making plays in open field. But to me, there are some questions to be answered defensively. Yes, I know it was a 42-7 victory, but that drive that Elko went on in the first half, when they essentially ran the ball right down Birmingham's throat, and went in and scored that touchdown. Those are some moments that I've kind of seen with Birmingham this year that feel un-Birmingham like compared to past years. And I'm looking at some of the teams they're going to have to deal with when we get to that open division. Yeah, they could be fine in the West Valley, but even so, even with a team like Taft and their ability to kind of take advantage and stretch the field and go over the top and the things that we've seen, there's still some questions to me about if they run into an offensive team that can say, okay, we can score with you. We know we might not be able to stop you because you're so big up front, but we're going to have to make you continue to have to kind of keep scoring because we're going to be able to score some points on your defense. There's some questions to me to be answered about them defensively. That makes me, it's hard. It's hard going against Birmingham because they don't lose. Every time you want to say, oh, that's them coming back to the pack, then they hammer somebody and make you look foolish. But I do think that there's some cheeks in the armor, and there's some questions they're going to have to answer when we get to the end of the season, when we get to the postseason. And one of those questions could be just projecting kind of going forward where we see things are in the city right now. Birmingham sitting at number 4 in the Max Prep City rankings, and the Valley Missions leader, Kennedy, sitting at 5. So if you were just projecting going forward, we could end up with a Kennedy-Birmingham matchup on a Friday night in a few weeks in the first round in open division. And one of the reasons why that game is really intriguing is because the quarterback matchup. Everything which starts in football is always, if you can get a sexy quarterback matchup, that's when you begin to start asking questions, right? So here's the question I'll ask to you. With everything that we've seen from Kevin Hawkins, with everything we've seen from Diego Montes, I think it's safe to say, even though Carlos Herrera and Tim Tanner Jr. and Nathan Swinson, they all would throw their names in the hat like, hey, don't forget about us in terms of being the best quarterbacks, not just in the Valley, but, cream of the crop in the city. If you had to take Diego Montes or Kevin Hawkins with all his physical prowess and the way he can wreck a game, who would you take if you had to win one game to go on to continue on in the postseason? I can give you can take Kevin Hawkins or you can take Diego Montes. Which way you leaning?
We have watched these young men for multiple years now. Neither one of them has crept up on our radar. We were telling people to keep an eye on them when they were young studs, chomping at the bit. And we said these two young men are coming each in their own right when the time was right. And the easy answer for me, based on the way they've developed and how they've progressed, probably late bloomer versus someone who was ready to go, I go Diego Montes.
Like for me, in my notes I wrote, there's three boxes he checks that I'm always looking for as the signal caller at that position. And that is athleticism, poise, and leadership. Things that he shows in abundance. We know this kid is athletic. He's not the biggest kid you've ever seen. He's kind of wiry, thin, but he's so quick and he's so tough. If you need 5 yards or you need 20, he can put the ball in, he can tuck the ball down and go get it. We've seen his accuracy as a passer just get better and better and better the more he's played. He's gotten to a point with his game where he makes it look easy. It's like he almost looks bored, like he's at practice sometimes with how easily the game is coming to him. So there's a part of me that looks at, and I'm like, yeah, I know. The conventional wisdom would look and tell you, well, look at Birmingham and look at the size of some of those monsters they throw at you. But when you look at how well-oiled of a machine that Kennedy is playing right now, that all starts with that quarterback. None of that goes without how he plays on a weekly basis. So there's a part of me that tells me that if I have that kid at quarterback, even if I'm going on the road to go play Birmingham, I know I got a good shot to win that game because I know what that young man is going to do. And that's not to cast any aspersions against Kevin Hawkins. Like I said, one of the things that pleasantly surprised us is the idea that he is physical, but he's gotten to a place now with his development where he's not just relying on his physical gifts. He can pass the ball when they need him to, and hell, he can give you 10 snaps on defense if you need to go get some stops on 3rd and long. They can line him up at defensive end because he's so big and so physically dominant. So you can't go wrong with him. But for one game, for my money, right now, I'm probably taking Diego Montez over most of the quarterbacks that we see in the city. So let's look ahead to week 7. Again, another jam-packed slate with a lot of interesting games on it. Over in the East Valley, you've got North Hollywood on the road at Poly. You got Fulton on the road at Verdugo. Monroe at Arleta. That game could be a sneaky good matchup just because, two teams and ornery teams that are going to want to get at it. Chavez on the road at Grant. One of those two teams gets to continue to keep momentum going and get their second consecutive win. Then you go over to the Valley Mission. You got intriguing matchups with Van Nuys on the road at Canoga. Potential trap game. San Fernando at Panorama. Angry Panorama team and an angry San Fernando team coming off of a bye. That should be a good one. And you got Kennedy on the road at Sylmar. Maybe the last question that he asked in the Valley Mission of a team that might be able to kind of derail Kennedy. This might be anybody's best shot with them having to go on the road to Sylmar. And then you got Reseda on the road at Mendez. In the West Valley, looking at those 3 games. In the West Valley, it's always intriguing matchups just because of how tough those leagues are. But you got Elko on the road at Granada Hills. I believe it's homecoming, I think. Taft at Chatsworth. And then Birmingham on the road at Cleveland. So, with all those games on the scoreboard, if you had to pick one, what's the game that sticks out the most for you?
The 3 that I had it down to was San Fernando at Panorama, Elko at Granada, and Birmingham at Cleveland. If I've got to pick just the one, I think I'm going Elko at Granada. Because this is going to tell us a lot more about 2 programs that we've been really keen on this year. The way Elko has turned things and picked things up during the season, the way Granada is this machine that just keeps humming. It really, really is going to be interesting to see them clash kind of strength versus strength. So that would be the one that I would pick there. And it's no shade on the other 2 games. Birmingham Cleveland's supposed to, I expect a really, really good one. Just because of that tenacity and grit that Cleveland has shown. But I think we've kind of established where Birmingham is this year.
Yeah. It's funny. Birmingham going on the road to Cleveland. That one has some potential as well. But because of who Birmingham is, it's hard to put them in that category of a road dog. You really look at Cleveland as more of a home underdog there. But last question I'll ask in terms of that week 7 slate is, there are 3 games. You touched on 2 of them with Elko on the road at Granada, San Fernando at Panorama. And there's a 3rd one I'll throw in there too, just because I'm interested to see how these 2 teams react coming off of what happened last week with Monroe getting beat down by Verdugo at home when I know they expected to play better than that. And Arleta disappointed, knowing they had that game wrapped up with, if they could just get one more stop defensively, and then they give up the home run at the end of that game to Josiah Taylor, and sort of dashed their hope probably of being able to kind of take the East Valley League outright. But of those 3 teams, Monroe on the road at Arleta, Elko at Granada, and San Fernando at Panorama, tough test on the road for all 3 of those teams. Who do you think has the best shot of pulling the upset on the road there?
Torn. I'm really, really torn, so I'm just going to flip an internal coin and go with this one. I'm going to go San Fernando over Panorama. They have a better chance. It was either them or El Camino at Granada. I think it's really, really close if we're going to rank like who has a better chance. I think those 2 teams really are in a position to do a road upset. I think Arleta's going to be way too pissed off to allow Monroe to do anything. You don't want to face a pissed off Arleta team. We've known that. So yeah, it's one of those two has the better chance.
Yeah, I probably lean towards San Fernando too, and I'll lean in towards San Fernando because I feel like Panorama and Elko both have mirror each other, which we kind of knew that from that matchup they had against each other. Super low scoring fist fight. Elko was able to put some points on the board, and they kind of walked away. I think it was what, 20-0 that game was, I believe. But it was a low scoring fist fight. And you kind of coming out of last week, you saw what the issues were for Panorama and Elko, which is they will fight you. They will stay in the fight, especially defensively. These are two tough, well-coached teams when you're talking about Elko and you're talking about Panorama. But it was 13-0. And these are two well-coached teams, two tough teams, but they both have the same issue. Kind of hard to put up points. Elko had a really good drive against Birmingham for that one score they had in the game, but there were opportunities where they could have kept drives going, but they just couldn't. It was just a little bit off in the past game. Then once Birmingham figured that out and they started stacking the box, that's when everything kind of fell apart for them. Same thing. Panorama is built similarly to the way you look at a North Hollywood, the way you look at like our leader teams that are going to be run the ball, run first, pound. But the problem is if you run into a team that is equipped to kind of not allow you to get the edges and kind of pick up first downs and keep drives going, and you're punting the ball and you start playing from behind, you find yourself in some trouble. And one thing we know about San Fernando is they can put points up. They might not always be consistent, but they can put points on the board. And then if they can go put up 2 scores, things could get spooky for Panorama. So I think I'll lean there as well. I think San Fernando has the best shot at a road upset, but there's going to be a lot of action and intrigue in all of those games this week. We have so many on the slate. The Valley Gems piece is going to be chock full of my opinions on how some of these games are going to go. So make sure you go to Valley Sports Telegram this week, guys, and check out everything. The latest edition of our Girls Volleyball Power List is up with Grant and Taps and staying strong at the top there. We've got the football power list coming out this week. Like I said, paying attention to the Valley Gems. Make sure you go read up on the stories of that we've had put up for multiple sports over the last week. We got so much good content coming out there. Make sure you give us a follow and make sure you give us a follow on all our social media platforms, BSD_media on Instagram, Twitter, Threads, everywhere. Make sure you're giving us a follow there. We keep you in the loop on everything we're doing here and with our team that's out in the field. And make sure you leave a like and subscribe to our YouTube. Like I said, we do these podcasts because we want to make sure that we're letting everybody know everything that's going on in and around the Valley. Because, hey, listen, and we're getting to the best time of the year, right? We've got football and flag football, and our fall sports are heading towards postseason. We're about a month out from our winter sports starting to get underway. We're going to have a lot of great teams on that front too, with all the winter sports get to going, and everything else that we have under the umbrella. Like I said, we appreciate and love the support that we get from you guys, and we will continue to crank this stuff out every week. So for Arshavir Sarian and your boy Kenny Hodges, we'll see you next time. Peace.